to the Token and Hobbs show on the Roads to Liberty Network.
Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday, another glorious Tuesday of doing the Lord's work here on the Roads to Liberty podcast. Doing things a little bit different today because our software decided it wanted to be a little bit obstinate on Nathan's end. Nathan normally hosts. Unfortunately, for him, I get to host today, and things are a little more limited on my end because I'm using a trial version. But other than technical difficulties, Mr. Nathan, how are we doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm a little peeved off because this is not the first time that this program has decided to take all my carefully laid plans and take a gigantic crap on them. But we're going to power through that. See, I had clips that I wanted to play. I wanted to do some video and stuff. And then this program that we use, it decided that it didn't want to do any of that. So here we are, ready. Let's just get past that because you know what? There's a lot of stuff tonight that's going to make me angry talking about it. So I figured we'd just do that. So the first thing I wanted to do tonight was to play a clip from the most recent Democratic debate. And I'm sure a lot of us have seen some of the insane highlights that have come out of the Democratic debate. And the biggest thing was Mr. Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke coming out and saying that he wants to steal everybody's AR-15s and AK-47s. It was a momentous moment for him. The crowd went wild. He gave a sterling speech. He said a lot of nonsense that doesn't hold up to scrutiny, a lot of nonsense that doesn't hold any logical weight. It was all an emotional argument, basically.
Yep.
He made the case that he wants to come in and force gun owners to sell him back their guns, give the government their guns, because that's going to make America a safer place. It was pretty hilarious to hear this former thief and drunk driver talking about how he wants to disarm Americans of their rightfully owned property. But you know what? That's what this guy wants to do.
Yep, equal parts stunning and brave.
Oh, all the stunning and brave. All the stunning and brave you can think of. And it's right. I was going to play the clip, and it was going to get me all hyped up to go. But you know what? We got to make do with what we have. So basically, here was the case he made out. He gets up. He's asked, "Hey, Mr. O'Rourke, this is this person for you. You're from El Paso. So why don't you tell us, do you really intend on confiscating guns from all these people?" Because this is what Democrats like to do. They like to pretend that they're not in favor of gun confiscations. They just want common sense gun regulations. You know, they want to eliminate the gun show loophole. They want universal background checks. You know, they want stuff of this nature. They want to ban assault weapons.
Stuff that sounds nice on the surface, and anybody who doesn't dig past the surface is going to be like, yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Exactly. And they go out of their way to say, nobody wants to take your guns. They try to gaslight you with this, right? Like, you crazy conspiracy theories. No one's coming for your guns. No one's going to take your guns. You're loonies. And then what do we have? Mr. Beto O'Rourke gets up in front of the entire nation and says, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15s. We're going to take your AK-47s. These are weapons of war specifically designed to kill people on a battlefield with high-velocity bullets that are specifically designed to rip people apart and blah, 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 blah. And gets a standing ovation from a crowd that has absolutely no idea what he's talking about, that has no knowledge whatsoever on how firearms work, how they operate, anything.
Right.
It's amazing. The man's allowed to get away with this crap because the people listening to him don't actually know what the hell he's talking about. They just know it sounds nice, and so they support it.
Yeah, and that right there is really what they're going for. When people like Beto and his his fellow travelers, they know that they don't know what they're talking about, and they are betting that the vast majority of the people listening to them have a passing knowledge or a layman's knowledge of what is really going on when dealing with firearms and the technical aspects of it and how they work and external ballistics and everything that goes into it. And they also are betting that people are not familiar with the terminology, and the people that are familiar with the terminology are going to come across as being just playing semantic games and splitting hairs over nothing. And this goes all the way back to the late 1980s at the Violence Policy Center when they first coined the term assault weapon, and codified it into an actual legal definition, a legislative definition that they could use. And they were really preying on the general public's ignorance of firearms and how they work. And there's a quote actually from the president or CEO or whatever of the Violence Policy Center, a man named Josh Sugarman. And you can look it up, and it goes something, I don't have it in front of me, it goes something along the lines of, we're going to take advantage of the general public's ignorance of firearms, that anything that looks like a machine gun is assumed to be a machine gun. So what they're doing is they're counting on the fact that a lot of people are going to see an M4 style rifle or an AK style rifle, AR or AK or any of these other modern sporting rifles, and they're just going to automatically assume in their mind that thing must be a machine gun designed for a battlefield. And you can, assault weapon's not a real term. You play these games, and you come off as being just a crackpot gun nut that's splitting hairs over, rinky-dink definitions of things, whereas the people pushing for gun control come across as the reasonable ones trying to save the children and whatnot.
See, I actually think there's a little bit of that going on, but I actually think that there's something else going on here, because you notice every time there's a new huge push for gun control, it seems like they move the terms a little bit. It's kind of like the global warming thing, where it first starts out as global warming and then it turns into climate change. Because the big thing for the longest time was assault rifles. We need to ban assault rifles. But every time anybody would say we need to ban assault rifles, what would gun supporters say? What was that? Assault rifles are already illegal. You don't know what you're talking about. You're obviously coming from a place of ignorance. You don't know a goddamn thing, so why should I listen to you? And they hear that again and again and again. So they have to move on to the next thing, because that argument doesn't work for anybody that actually knows anything about guns. So what are they saying? We need to ban assault weapons. But again, they get hit they get hit again and again. Assault weapons isn't a real term. It doesn't actually mean anything. So when you say you want to ban assault weapons, what do you actually mean? And you pin them into a corner and try to make them define what they actually mean by that term. And they have no idea. They think an assault weapon is a fully automatic rifle, which is already illegal. You tell them this, and they lose their damn mind. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. Their argument is the rug has just been pulled out from under them. So what do they go to now? What is the big thing now that they're all about? Weapons of war. That's the ticket now. The AK-47 and AR-15, these are guns specifically designed for troops on a battlefield, which in the mind of an ignorant gun grabber means there's some kind of super weapon.
Right.
Super deadly, uniquely lethal weapon that is more powerful, more deadly than any other weapons that civilians have access to, and therefore, because of that, must be banned. This is what they think.
Right. It's word games, it's semantics, and on their part, it's deceptive and duplicitousness. They are literally trying to prey upon the emotions and the ignorance of the general public in order to push forward an agenda that they know would not be popularly supported if they just came out with plain language and told everyone what they actually wanted. So they have to play these little word games. They have to play these little mind games. They have to manipulate the public in order to get what they want.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's the thing about it. None of these terms that they use for manipulating your emotions have any concrete definitions. Assault weapons isn't an actual term that has a real definition that actually means anything. Assault rifle does have a real concrete definition. An assault rifle is a thing that is already illegal. An assault style weapon is even more vague than an assault weapon.
Right.
An assault style weapon that literally means nothing.
Right. If I put stripes and a spoiler on my car, does that make it a racing style car? No, it's all about cosmetics and appearance, and it doesn't have anything to do with function. And that's the point. They want you to be afraid of what you don't understand, and they continually move the goalposts so that it's almost impossible for anybody to actually understand what they're talking about.
And here's what they're going to do. Because we all know that banning AR-15s isn't actually going to do anything. Because there's hundreds of other rifles available in the open market right now that are just as powerful or more powerful than an AR-15. People will ask, why do mass shooters use AR-15s? Well, because they look cool.
And they're everywhere.
They look badass. Okay, a hunting rifle does not look as badass as an AR-15, but a lot of hunting rifles are objectively more deadly than an AR-15. All right, An AR-15 doesn't fire that big a round. It's not that powerful of a rifle.
No,
it's really not.
No, the reason it's the choice is because it's intimidating. It's cheap. They're everywhere. The ammunition is cheap, and you can carry a lot of it. There are objective advantages to using a gun like an AR or an AK if you're going to commit a crime of mass murder.
But these are not insurmountable advantages.
No, they're not. They're not.
You can compensate for those advantages that you lose quite easily with a regular looking hunting rifle. And see, here's the plan, because we all know that banning AR-15s, AK-47s, banning these platforms is not going to actually do anything. And the gun grabbers know that too. Beto O'Rourke knows that this ban is simply an emotional plea with no rationale behind it. So he knows it's not going to work. So what's going to happen? He's going to ban them. No one's going to have them, whatever. He's going to ban them, and the ban's not going to work. There's going to be a mass shooting with a gun that people don't even think of for mass shootings. And they're going to look at it and say, well, this gun is more powerful than an AR-15. So that has to go. But wait, we need to ban all weapons of that caliber. And so they'll do that. And then there'll still be gun violence. Why? Because the vast majority of gun violence done in this country is done with handguns, not with long rifles. So when the gun violence continues, despite this ban and AR-15s and high caliber rifles, the next step is to go after handguns.
Right. After they get the so-called assault weapons, the next thing they're gonna come for is your hunting rifle now suddenly becomes a high caliber sniper rifle. So that has to be done away with. Handguns are deeply concealable for nefarious reasons. Shotguns are close quarter battle. I mean, it never ever stops. And the next thing you know, we're in a position like in the United Kingdom where they've got things that look like post office drop boxes for knife amnesty. If you've got a knife you want to get rid of, go ahead and dispose of it here. It's like, come the fuck on.
Yeah, in England, I've seen people complain about not being able to buy an egg beater at the store unless you're 18 or older. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that goes on in gun grab countries where you don't have a right to bear arms, and they just keep going down the list of everyday items that they want banned for your safety. It wasn't enough to take the guns. It wasn't enough to make them super expensive and hard to get. No, we got to go to knives. That's the next step. No, we got to ban. and pepper spray
Yeah.
and fucking egg beaters and potato peelers. See, it's people say, oh, the slippery slope fallacy, it's not a real thing. No, it's a real thing, because we already know that the solutions that people like Beto O'Rourke are suggesting to solve our gun violence problem, we know they're not going to work. And when they don't work and the problem does not go away, it's not like they're going to come to their senses and say that legislation was a bad idea.
Right.
They're going to go to the next thing. And the next thing is going to be any gun with a higher caliber than an AR-15. And the thing after that is going after concealable handguns and shotguns and then knives and then pepper spray. And the next thing you know, we're the United Kingdom, where you can't even carry a butter knife down the street without being arrested by the police.
Oi, mate, you got a license for that butter knife? Off to massacre some toast, are we? Eh, what?
And the thing, it doesn't even work in the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has a very high crime rate. Not as high a violent crime rate, but a very high crime rate. Burglaries in the United Kingdom are a horrible issue. It's so bad there that the cats tried to break into your house. True story. Happened to me when I was living over there. A cat tried to break into our house. But that's the kind of thing you can expect in England. Crime is bad. People steal shit from each other. And one of the reasons they do that is they know that there's nothing you can do to stop them.
Right.
You can't even buy a paintball gun without getting permission to do so.
Right. We were lucky back in the 90s when the 94 assault weapons ban had a 10-year sunset clause built into it. We were incredibly lucky that that came and went. And now I grew up, in my formative years was that 10-year period. So when the assault weapons ban sunset in 2004, it was like, it also had this kind of a convergence with the war on terror, where you had a lot of soldiers that went overseas and then they come back and now they can suddenly legally buy something that was very similar to the gun that they carried overseas. And prior to the 94 assault weapons ban, ARs and AKs and things like that were kind of a niche market. Even though they were available, people, they didn't really see much of a use for them. After the 2004 sunset, merging with all of these soldiers coming back with their war experiences, the modern sporting rifle market exploded. I have a feeling that the gun market, the tactical market, probably wouldn't be as dynamic as it is right now if it hadn't been for the wars in the Middle East. But that's a conversation for another time. This next time, there won't be a sunset built into it. They'll make sure that any assault weapons ban is permanent this time around. No sunset clause. The only way you'd be able to get rid of it is to do a full-scale repeal, and they're going to make that as difficult to do as possible.
You're damn right they will. So let's move on to a same subject, different issue. So Beto comes out and says, we're going to take your AR-15s, we're going to take your AK-47s, we're going to force gun owners at gunpoint to give up their guns. That's what he's saying. Whenever the government says they're going to pass a law, it means they're going to point a gun at somebody and make them obey. That's what government laws do. Now, sometimes that's worthwhile. Point a gun at a pedophile and say, hey, don't rape kids. I'm okay with that. Point a gun at a gun owner and say, give me your AR-15. That's something I'm not quite okay with. So he says, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15. And one representative, Briscoe Kane, I think that's how you spell his name, goes, my AR is ready for you, Robert Francis. To which bitchy Beto replies, this is a death threat, representative. Clearly you shouldn't own an AR-15 and neither should anybody else. What a bitch.
Yep.
A death threat. Here you are, Beto. Mr. Robert Francis, make-believe Mexican. Here you are, Mr. 1%. You are telling thousands of gun owners across this country, everyday Americans, mostly from red states, you are telling them, I will send trigger-happy armed goons to your house. I will force you to give up your rightfully obtained property that you spend money on, property that you have a legal and moral right to own, and I will take it at gunpoint. And if you resist, I will murder you. And we'll probably murder your dog anyway, just because that's what cops like to do. And then Mr. Kane says, come and take him, which is a reasonable response to someone threatening to violate your civil rights. And Mr. Cucky O'Rourke says, this is a death threat. You just threatened my life. Wow, this is why you shouldn't own a gun, because you owning a gun is dangerous to my well-being. Yeah, fuck you, Beto. The hell are you think? You're threatening thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans, and you're getting your little panties in a wad because this guy says, I won't let you violate my civil liberties. Fuck you, Beto.
Yep, that's he seems to have this complete disconnect with the fact that law enforcement implies force. And when you threaten, and it is a threat, to make something that somebody already owns illegal overnight, and they will be expected to hand them in, or in his words, hell yes, we're going to take X, Y, or Z, that implies that you are going to take that item at the barrel of the guns of government. So if anybody is leveling a threat here, it's Beta. And when somebody says, you can come and take my stuff, but I'll resist, for him to bounce back and say, oh my God, that's a threat. It's like the dynamic here has been completely flipped on its head. And you just, I'm done with this clown.
So one Elijah Schaefer, he also had something to say about this. He said, if the government violates its charter and begins to turn on us by forcibly removing our liberties, then that is a declaration of war by government on its people, in which case the citizens have a right to self-defense. And you might remember this guy that's about to reply, Representative Eric Swalwell. You'll remember him as the guy that threatened to nuke people for rising up against government for taking their guns. He threatened to nuke people. His reply, a war threat, ? Thank you for proving why we need to have licensing requirements, background checks, and red flag laws. Anyone who would, quote, go to war, unquote, if a law is passed through democratic means should not own a gun. I love how this guy somehow thinks that passing a law through democratic means automatically makes it legitimate and moral. Automatically makes it right. Oh, we passed this law through democratic means. Look, a terrible law passed democratically is no different than a terrible law passed by an oligarchical dictator. They're literally no different, right? I don't give a shit if it's a dictator trying to violate our civil liberties or a democratically elected government doing the same thing. It doesn't make a lick of difference to me. It's still an illegitimate law, and we still have the right to resist it with firearms if necessary.
Right. What is that? I think it was Thomas Jefferson that said that if a law is unjust, a man is not only right to resist it, but has an obligation to do so.
I mean, there are a ton of examples of terrible laws throughout this country's history passed with democratic consent. Right? You don't even have to think very hard to think of one. I mean, how long did slavery exist in this country? That didn't exist despite the vast majority of people wanting to be rid of it. It existed because you couldn't get rid of it in this country, right? Short of a civil war.
Right.
You don't even have to think very hard to think of institutions and laws that existed in this country that were immoral, that were passed through democratic means. Hell, the only way the United States even came into existence was because people fought back against the government ruling over them.
Correct.
So Mr. Eric Swalwell, however the hell you say it, I don't know how you say his name. He doesn't belong anywhere near government. This guy is a basket case who shouldn't be representing anybody, after all. So Beto O'Rourke went on Meet the Press, and he had this to say: I refuse to even acknowledge the politics or the polling or the fear of the NRA, he told NBC's Meet the Press. that has purchased the complicity and silence of members of Congress. This, again, going with the old narrative that the NRA is the only reason that we have gun rights activists at all. Like the reason me and you are here talking is because the NRA is like paying us to do it.
Right. If anybody watched last week's episode and the week before that, we talked about how the NRA is a complete shit show right now, and if anything, they're not doing enough.
No, they're absolutely not. And they're a moderate group. Let's call them what they are. The NRA is a moderate gun group. They don't actually represent, they don't actually defend our gun rights in any serious way. You know, they're like the Republican Party. They're just progressivism going at the speed limit. At some point in time, they're going to back these assault weapons bans. I guarantee you that's going to happen.
They pay lip service to defending the Second Amendment, but when the rubber meets the road, they're almost never anywhere to be found.
So I want to talk about a case of a Phoenix gun store that this is kind of pretty funny. I'll just read the article. It's from thepluralist.com. It goes, a Phoenix gun store ran a discount on AR-15 rifles in direct response to 2020 Democratic presidential hopeful Beto Francis O'Rourke and sold out in less than 4 hours. In a Facebook post shared Friday, Alpha Dog Firearms revealed it had sold out of its $349.99 Beto specials. We're trying to process the orders and work on getting more special deals for our good friend Gun Grabber Beto, the company said in a post, which was liked more than 1,000 times. So this is funny. There's a picture of Beto O'Rourke standing under. He's at a gun show and he's talking to the gun owners, and he's underneath a sign that says AR-15s $349.99. And that's what they decided to run this Beto special as. In honor of Gun Grabber Beto, more AR-15s are now in the hands of law-abiding citizens who can now shoot your police friends when they come to the door to confiscate guns. So good on you.
I could not be happier.
Oh, no, not at all. Here's the funny thing. Here's the funny thing about Republicans and conservatives. This is where the rubber really meets the road, because they're all about that Blue Lives Matter bullshit. You know, they're all about worshiping police. They're all about that. Right. But Beto is not going to your house to take your guns. It's not going to be some soy boy Antifa cuck going to your door. Guess who it's going to be? It's going to be a cop. Are you going to have the guts to fight that cop in defense of your liberties?
Let's take this a step further, because this is something that I saw brought up actually today. And I know we've kind of gone into this gun thing a little too long here. We're already 30 minutes in, but just one quick aside here is a point that I saw today was, not only are you going to have the guts to stand up and resist if the police or the ATF come knocking on your door, but are you going to have the courage to get kitted up, get your gun, and go out into the street if you see your friends or neighbors with the ATF outside their door? Are you going to be willing to stand up for their rights too, if they're the subject of one of these red flag laws? That, I think, is probably an even more pertinent question on this. Because it's one thing to barricade yourself in your house and say, hell no, I won't go. But it's another thing entirely to actually do a Bundy Ranch style standoff when the man comes knocking on your neighbor's door.
And we all saw how effective the Bundy Ranch standoff was. It actually accomplished its goal.
Yes,
it got the government off those poor folks' back. So you know what? That was really good on them. And that's what it really takes. It takes organization. It takes gun owners and gun rights activists actually working together to accomplish a goal like that. A lone guy can get surrounded and shot, Ruby Ridge. That can happen. But a whole group of ranchers getting together, not just ranchers, anybody, getting together and demanding that the government respect their God-given rights, that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, it takes organization, but it also takes a sense of community as well.
Now, you know, we're all going to get red flagged for these episodes. This is, oh my goodness. We're going to be the subject of an Eric Swalwell. We're going to be on the receiving end of a tactical nuke from future President Eric Swalwell right into your living room with one of those amazing drones that the government seems to love so much.
Yep.
That's going to be fun. Okay, so let's move on from the gun grabber. Now, we talk a lot about gun rights on this show because we're really big into gun rights. I think that's obvious. But we're also into not allowing fake news to get away with their crimes against humanity. Now, there's more fake news coming out of the New York Times this week. Bombshell, quote unquote, report dropped in the New York Times, revealing a new accusation of sexual impropriety from one Justice Brett Kavenaugh. So here's how the accusation goes. Some guy says that back in college, he saw some boys push Brett Kavanaugh's private parts into the hands of an unwilling female. And the New York Times,
Brett Kavenaugh must be hung like a mule.
I know, right?
Because if you're able to not only get your dick out, but have somebody else place it into somebody else's hand, I mean, whew,
the logistics of that are already kind of hard to picture.
Yeah,
you're trying to think of it in your mind. So they're at a party. Brett Kavenaugh is just walking around without any pants on, just naked from the waist down, just bare ass of the world, and his buddies are just walking behind him, pushing him, grabbing him by the ass, and pushing him into random people. That is the picture I'm getting from the way they describe it. So this is the story that the New York Times decides to run with, and it's based on a book that just came out that was written by a couple New York Times writers called The Education of Brett Kavenaugh, which I have not read and I have no intention to read because I don't like wasting my time on garbage fake news books. So the New York Times decides to run a piece about this, and it gets everyone all up in hysterics. There's people calling for the impeachment of Brett Kavenaugh. People are outraged. But there's one important factor that the New York Times article did not acknowledge at the time and was forced to add in later. See, for accusations like this to work, they requires a victim. They need someone who is harmed. And in this case, the woman who had someone else's junk forcibly placed into her hand, that would be the victim in this case. The New York Times knows this. So they sought out this woman, all right? And they found this woman. And they asked her about this incident. And you know what she had to say?
I have no recollection of that incident.
She doesn't remember shit, apparently. And here's the funny thing. This would be a pretty memorable incident. If some dude forces junk into your hands, you'd probably remember that. I remember that.
I mean, that's like a normal weekend at an army barracks party, but I mean, there's a difference.
I thought you were in the Army, not the Navy.
There's a difference between slumming it at a barracks party and the Ivy League frat party, I guess. I didn't put my dick into anybody's hands, but at least
allegedly.
Allegedly, yes, allegedly.
You can't force me to admit anything. Deny. Make counter accusations.
Right, exactly. There's but no, in all seriousness, it would be a pretty memorable moment. But the thing is that this incident was in this book that you're talking about, The Education of Brett Kavenaugh, and her not recollecting it is also in that book. So I think the name of the guy that brought the accusation was like Tom Steyer or something. He was a Clinton lawyer. So he goes out there and he says, "Oh, I heard Brett Kavenaugh put his dick in some poor girl's hand." And the girl's like, "I don't remember anything like that ever happening." And the New York Times just runs with it without... It's like you're just making shit up at this point.
Isn't this placing victim status on this poor woman when she never claimed to be a victim? Like, how do you just tell a woman you're a victim when she's telling you she's not?
Yeah, it's insanity. It's like they're just flipping through a yearbook from the same time that Brett Kavenaugh was in school and just finding some pig like, oh yeah, she looks like she had a dick in her hand at one point. Let's just throw this out there, see what sticks.
And the guy making these accusations refuses to go on public record and talk about this. You know, he apparently contacted the FBI about it, but it went nowhere because, of course, it went nowhere because there's no victim. And then he told these New York Times reporters about it, and they decide to run with the New York Times apparently decides to run with the story, despite there being no victim here, and it's just this one dude saying it. And this turned into a whole big thing. No, because now Democrats are calling for the impeachment of Brett Kavanaugh over this obviously fake news story. They just regurgitate what the New York Times says, and then just take it as fact. And there's a big revelation that went down in the book too, because you remember Christian Blasey Ford from the original Brett Kavanaugh. I feel like this is the sequel to a bad movie that we're forced to live through again. Yeah. You know, it's the kind of sequel that doesn't know how to be its own thing, so it's just riffing back to the original over and over again. So remember Christian Blasey Ford? She was the original Kavanaugh accuser, and she was the only one that had any shred of credibility at all from the get-go. And I'm going to read you a little bit from the New York Post on Christian Blasey Ford's friend Doubt's story. Quote, high school friend of Brett Kavanaugh accuser Christian Blasey Ford said she's skeptical of Ford's accusing the Supreme Court justice of sexually assaulting her during a party in the 1980s. Quote, I don't have any confidence in the story, Leland Kaiser told the New York Times reporters in their book, The Education of Brett Kavenaugh. Those facts together, I don't recollect, and it just didn't make any sense, she told the authors. Ford testified at Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing that Kaiser attended the Maryland House party in the summer of 1982 when Kavanaugh was 17 and she was 15. Kaiser threw cold water on that scenario. It would be impossible for me to be the only girl at a get-together with three guys, have her leave, then not figure out how she was getting home, Kaiser told the authors of the book that was published on Tuesday. I just really didn't have confidence in the story. So here's a big thing. One of the only people that maybe could have corroborated Ford's story says that she has no confidence in the story going down the way that Ford said it did. So there's your news story right there. There's your page one article. But no, the New York Times decides to go with this other fake news, a new fake news story that's supported by nothing, and just go with that. Good New York Times. And they wonder why we call them fake news.
Right. It's absolutely nuts how far they are willing to take this Trump derangement syndrome, this orange man bad. They're dragging their credibility through the mud forever to get at one guy and his political appointments. And the thing that is so crazy about this is let's say that they succeed somehow, either in impugning Trump enough that they get him impeached, or that he is a one-term president and they get what they want. Orange Man is out of the office. Well, from that point on, they have completely destroyed themselves as any kind of an institution, because you're going to have half of the country that is never going to believe anything that they say ever, ever, ever again, no matter what. And the other half of the population is going to have a significant chunk of it that is going to look at everything they say with a skeptical eye, and rightfully so. So they are burning themselves down. It's like a suicide bomber. You know, it's like, I don't care if I go down as long as I take you down with me. It's insane.
This is from the New York Post. This capped off a week in which the Times had to delete a tweet praising Mao Zedong, one of history's greatest mass murderers, as one of history's great revolutionary figures. And another tweet saying that what happened on 9/11 was that airplanes took aim and brought down the World Trade Centers. Yeah, airplanes did that all on their own. You know, they've been watching, like my son has this show, what's it called?
Super Wings?
Super Wings, yes.
Super Wings.
You know it.
Yes, I do.
The Super Wings just decided to commit a mass terrorist attack. That's what happened. Times editors doubtless thought that mentioning radical Islamists were the ones who aimed those airplanes would play into Trump's hands. Just a few days earlier, CNN issued a report on the circumstances around an American spy being taken out of Russia that was so wrong, the Times felt moved to contradict it. The decision to extract the spy was made while Obama was president, the Times reported. Yet CNN blamed Trump for endangering an agent and forcing his extraction. And we didn't talk about this story, but yeah, more fake news coming out of the big corporate media sites. Here's the funny thing. They like to say, oh, there's no media bias. There's no media bias. These are just honest mistakes. It's very funny how the honest mistakes never go against Democrats and progressives.
Right.
You know, whenever it's something bad about a Democrat or a progressive or someone on the left, those stories are always corroborated and vetted, and they make sure they have them right. But when you have these unsubstantiated nonsense stories about Republicans and especially about Trump or Kavanagh, just throw whatever out there and you'll fix it later if you have it wrong, which is, funny enough, most of the time.
Yeah, and any retractions will always be buried back at like page 7B, way back behind the comics section or something. There's I'm sure you know who Dan Bongino is. I listen to his podcast just about every day. He's an ex-Secret Service agent, so he knows how the sausage is made. He resigned from the Secret Service, and now he has, he's a conservative, and he's very open about the fact that he is a conservative. But he also has a lot of good inside sources, and he's been talking about all of this fake news. I mean, he's got a hard-on for the New York Times lately, and all of the fake spy stuff that they're coming up with. But he's got this thing that he calls the Bongino rule, where he says that anytime you see a story or a tweet that is negative, especially towards Trump, but towards conservatives in general, or any of Trump's appointees, wait 24 to 48 hours before you jump on it, and you will save yourself a bitter embarrassment. And so far, he's been right about everything, because all of these hyper sensationalized bullshit stories have turned out to be exactly that, bullshit.
Yeah, you can't believe anything that comes out of the mainstream media. It's so frustrating. Because then who was it? Who was that guy that said calling mainstream media fake news was equivalent to calling them the N-word?
I think that was Jim Acosta.
Yes, Mr. Fredo.
No, that's Chris Cuomo.
That's
Chris Cuomo's Fredo. Jim Acosta, I think, was fake news as a racial slur, because we all know that journalists come from Journalandia.
Fredo is fake news. There, I just covered all my bases right there. So this Kavanaugh stuff has some real implications. I'm going to read you a little excerpt from an article in The Hill. Representative Anaya Presley, Democrat from Massachusetts, told CNN Tuesday that, quote, it's deeply disturbing for Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavenaugh to have this many allegations against him, explaining that she had filed an impeachment resolution against him in order to get to the truth. It's deeply disturbing that someone that serves in the highest court in the land could have this many allegations, she said. Now, let me tell you one thing. No, it's not. An accusation means literally nothing in this case if there's no evidence to back it up. If there's no evidence for any of these.
Right.
So the fact that there's an accusation is literally meaningless. See, that's the thing about it. Anyone can make an accusation against anyone else.
Yeah.
All right. And the higher profile a person is, the more political motivation there is to go after a guy, the more likely there is to be accusations against them.
Right. Like I could get 50 of my buddies together and we could accuse Ruth Bader Ginsburg of touching my pee-pee when I was in preschool. Doesn't make it true.
How many accusations are there about Hillary Clinton killing people? How many? Should we count
None.
them? Should we
None,
go through
because she is a pillar of the community and a wonderful person.
But see, that's the thing. Those are accusations. People have accused her of murder. But for some reason, those don't get treated the same, you see? Those accusations don't count. It's only accusations against Republicans and people like Kavenaughh and Trump. And we're not even fans of Trump and Kavenaughh.
Exactly.
What the thing about this case that's so annoying is the precedent that this sets. All right, the precedent is that mere words can prevent somebody from taking an office. All right, you don't need to back it with evidence. You don't need to corroborate a story. You just need to say something, and a guy can't take office. Now, if Democrats think that this kind of standard won't be used against them when it's their turn to put someone on the Supreme Court, they're fucking wrong. Because once you learn this lesson, it never goes back. All right, once you start accusing people of sexual misconduct for political reasons, then there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. And once you accept the premise that mere words are enough to ruin someone's career with no evidence to back it whatsoever, that's what you're going to get. People abusing that kind of principle.
Yeah, exactly. And
it's going to happen.
The only difference is that the Democrats have the entire media complex carrying their water for them. So, but whatever.
Yeah, you Democrats always complain about victim blaming, right? I bet you once an accusation against a high-ranking Democrat that they like comes out, there's going to be victim blaming. There's going to be victim blaming. There's going to be attacking the accuser all you want, and it's going to be okay because it's to propel their political viewpoint. So I got one more story I wanted to get through. We might not get to the Snowden thing, which is a whole other thing that's funny. But Tulsi Gabbard, everyone's favorite Democrat, she had a few fun things that she said over this last week. I'm going to read you a little excerpt from Fox News. It goes, Democratic presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard took President Trump to task over his response to attacks on Saudi oil fields, liking his wait-and-see approach to being Saudi Arabia's bitch. Trump tweeted earlier Sunday that the U.S. was waiting to hear from the kingdom as to who they believe was the cause of the attack and under what terms we would proceed. Trump awaits instructions from Saudi's masters, Gabbard tweeted in response. Having our country act as Saudi Arabia's bitch is not America first. God, I love that.
Yeah.
God, I love that.
Yeah. The thing, about 5 or 10 years ago, if Iran, and let's just give it the benefit of the doubt and say that this wasn't an attack by Iran, whether it's cruise missiles or, truck launch scuds or, drone bombing or whatever. Let's just say Iran attacked Saudi Arabia. 10 years ago, the U.S. and basically the entire Western world would be rushing to Saudi Arabia's defense to flatten, scorched earth Iran because Saudi Arabia runs OPEC and Saudi Arabia controls the oil. Now, the United States is top dog in the world when it comes to petroleum production. Believe it or not, the U.S. is a net exporter, and the U.S. is actually exporting more oil than Saudi Arabia. So the United States doesn't need Saudi Arabia right now. The only reason that we would be up in arms is because the military-industrial complex has had a hard-on for Iran since the mid-'70s and is just itching for any excuse to attack them. But strategically, geopolitically, and economically, the U.S. really has no business getting itself involved in this war. So what I say is we let our number one enemy, Iran, and our number one frenemy, Saudi Arabia, let them fight. Let them burn each other to the fucking ground. I don't care. Let it happen. One of those regimes is going to knock the other one out, and whoever is left, the United States just has to look at it and say, okay, you won that one. You keep that shit over there, and we'll keep our shit over here, and nobody else has to get hurt. And that's the way that all foreign engagements with hostile actors need to be. Don't start no shit, won't be no shit. But if you do start shit, we're going to end it.
Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard also equated Trump's willingness to put America's military at the behest of an evil Saudi dictatorship to being pimped out to the Saudis, which I just love the way Tulsi she knows she's not going to win. She knows that the establishment Democratic Party is already against her. She's getting the Bernie Sanders and Ron Paul treatment. She knows this. So she's not holding back in talking this way. Yeah, Trump is making America's military the Saudi. He's being a bitch for the Saudis, and he's pimping out the U.S. military to them. That's exactly right. But she also had something else that was very interesting. She said she was making a campaign appearance, I believe, in Iowa, and this is a conversation she had with a voter named Seth. It goes like this. Seth says, as a libertarian in this election, I'm curious as to what each candidate thinks. I wonder, do you have any ethical problems with taxation, whether or not it's theft or whether or not it's permissible, even if it is theft, or what are your thoughts on this subject? To which she replies, taxation is theft. That's not all. I'm sorry. Taxation is theft when our taxes are being used towards things that do not serve our interests. Y'all work very hard every day. When you pay those taxes, you should have faith and trust that they will be used for things like making sure you've got safe roads to drive on. You make sure that your kids are getting a good education in public schools, to make sure that your firefighters have what they need in order to make sure your house does not burn to the ground if something happens. There are basic needs that we have in this country, and our taxes are meant to serve those needs. Now, the funny thing about Tulsi Gabbard is she really is a progressive at heart. She just is really good on foreign policy stuff, which is why libertarians have made her kind of their darling in the Democratic race. But let's be honest, if it was just her and maybe a couple other moderate Democrats, no libertarians would give a damn about Tulsi Gabbard, right? Because instead of comparing her to Elizabeth Warren and Beto O'Rourke and Kamala Harris, you're just comparing her to other just sort of bad candidates instead of god-awful ones. She really wouldn't come out looking all that great. But compared to this field, she looks fucking amazing. And compared to this field, she looks a lot better. But this is a way of speaking that you don't hear from Democrats very often. All right. No. She acknowledges that taxation under certain circumstances is indeed theft. Now, that's better than you'll hear from almost any other Democrat out there.
Yeah.
Right? They'll say that taxation is a moral good. It's your moral duty as a citizen to do. And Tulsi is at least willing to acknowledge that under certain conditions, it's theft. Now, that's not what libertarians want. Libertarians want you to say taxation isn't theft, period. But it's good for a candidate here's the thing about it. Even if a candidate sees taxation and say as a necessary evil, which just seems like she's making the case here, I would much rather have that than someone that thinks of it as a moral good.
Yeah.
Because they'd be a lot less likely to waste your money willy-nilly because they know that they do not have a moral right to that. They only have in their mind, they only have a moral right to it so long as they're wise stewards of that money. Unlike a Bernie Sanders or an Elizabeth Warren or Kamala Harris or Donald Trump even, who think that they just have a moral right to that money to spend it however the hell they like.
Right.
So
I say that necessary evil beats out moral imperative any day of the week.
Yep, I'll say that too. So I think we don't have time to do the Edward Snowden stuff, but just so you guys know, the Department of Justice is suing Edward Snowden to get all the money from the proceeds of his new memoir, which is dumb. Keep it before you buy Edward Snowden's memoir, or buy it right now before they win their suit or whatever, so that he gets some of the money. But if they win their suit, pirate that shit. Don't give the Justice Department your money.
Yep.
I'm sure Edward Snowden has a way you can donate crypto to him. Probably. I haven't checked, but he probably has something like that.
He'd have to. That seems to be right in his wheelhouse. And it reminds me of this meme. It's actually a set of memes that I saw today. It was like this guy like pointing in his hand like this, and it says the government on it. It's like anytime I get paid, and the government's like put the money here, and it was a really funny meme set. And it was like anytime I work overtime to make some extra money, and the government's there. It's like anytime I pay an employee, and the government's like that. Anytime I buy a car, the government's like that. And it's just like all of these things. Some of them even contradict each other. It's like anytime I get paid, the government wants money. Anytime I pay someone else, the government wants money. And so that was pretty good. And this reminds me of that, Edward Snowden blows the whistle on the government, has to run away, gets stuck in a foreign country because they revoke his passport, writes a book, makes money off of it, which is probably the only money that he has coming in other than maybe some crypto farming. And the government's like,
give me money.
Yep, exactly. Fuck you, government, and your taxes. And I think that is a good place to leave off.
Yep, I think so too. All right, that's where we're going to end it. Remember, everyone, the website is roads2liberty.com, roads2liberty.com. Like us on Facebook if you like our readings of these tweets like by Swalwell and O'Rourke and other gun grabbers. We had a whole thing going on today, which is just fake tweets from various people throughout history. That was really funny. Thank you, Hobbs, for putting that together. That was really great. So check that out. Because our Hitler meme from yesterday got taken down, I was very sad about it. But not a single one of these memes got taken down, even though they're functionally identical to that meme that was taken down yesterday. Amazing. Hitler gets taken down automatically, but Stalin still up there.
Yep.
Apparently, murdering Jews is not okay, but mass incarcerating Japanese people because they're Japanese, that's okay.
Yep. FDR stayed up. Stalin stayed up. William Randolph Hearst, the OG drug warrior, the guy that was the driving force to get marijuana criminalized, he stayed up.
Seriously, screw that guy.
Yeah. All of these. Jefferson Davis, the very first one that I posted up today, talking about how you gotta turn in your runaway slaves for I thought that slavery would definitely be a third rail. That's why I put it up as number one. But nope, Jefferson Davis and turning in your runaway slaves, that one stays up. It's just little mustache.
It's just me.
Man.
It's me. It's what it is. My meme got taken down. Your memes get to stay up. And it annoyed me because that had like 20,000 reach and like 500 reactions to it.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. They just took that all away. So, well, anyway,
I think the 7 or 8 basically functionally identical ones that I put up today combined didn't have the type of reach that one Hitler meme did. And that to me is a little bit disappointing, and also, bravo to you for doing that.
Well, see, it's not Facebook likes to tank your reach after they take something down on your page.
Yeah.
So when I got hit with a 3-day ban last time, our reach tanked. Like it was way up and just went down immediately because they hit me with the fake news nonsense or something like that. I don't even remember what it was that they banned me for, but it was something retarded. It was some nonsense. Well, yes, it was something very retarded, and Facebook is known for being very retarded. I'm sorry, you can't say that word. I forgot. All right, so before we go off on another tangent, remember roads2liberty.com. Like us on Facebook. We're getting up towards 7,000 likes, so thank you everybody for that. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Minds, and YouTube, and anywhere podcasts are found. So check that out, and remember, everybody, stay sane because the world will not do it for you. Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good one.